And welcome back. We are going to, of course, look at our first fundamental steps at creating pixel art. So let's take a step back and look at our figure that we used in our last video. Now in here, one of the things that we can identify with our pixel art is that everything is comprised of basic shapes. So for example, if I look at this man here, I know that he has a round head, so then I can go ahead and use things like the ellipse tool, and that would be representing a circle. And let me just take the fill off of that for this time being so we can actually see it. There he is. And then, of course, I would also have things such as our rectangle tool that we can use to represent our body. We can represent the legs also with rectangles. And, of course, probably the arms could be, you could argue, is kind of a rectangular shape as well. Now, this is, of course, just a quick rough overview, but we can use these basic shapes to create some figures. Now, let's say we wanted to do the same thing, but let's make, for example, like a dog. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and make a new image. So File, New. Let's do 40 by 40 pixels. Let's take our artboards off, make sure our background is set to white, and go ahead and click on Create. Control 0 to zoom in, and let's tap Control -1 once just to zoom out just a little bit. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. And so now I'm working on layer 1 instead of the locked background layer. Alright, let's go ahead and switch to being able to use our selection tool for this. So we're going to use our rectangular marquee tool here. And the first thing I want to do is make a square, for example, to represent the dog's head. Now, if I just click and drag the selection, I can very easily end up with a rectangle. But if I want something, let's say, that's a little more square, if I hold down the Shift key, you can see as I drag the selection, it will remain the same size. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Hold down the Shift key, and let's go ahead and make it about 11 by 11 pixels. Now, of course, I have a selection here, and I can go now to my fill bucket, which is right here, and I'm going to make sure that it's set to black, and let's fill that in. Now let's repeat the process. Let's do the body. Again, rectangular marquee tool. We're going to go ahead and just select right here, making the body just a little bit wider, simply because it's the body of the creature. And I can hold down Shift, it'll select it back, or if I don't, I can get something that's a little bit different. Make it just a little taller. And let's go to our fill bucket. Now we have a body, we have a head. Let's create some ears and stuff like that. Now, of course, I can use other shapes and stuff like that to create this, but for this exercise, let's go ahead and just use the pencil tool, because we are going to have to create something that needs to have a little bit more point to it. For example, the ears. If I do a triangle, they're just going to look like triangles mounted on top of it. And we don't want necessarily just a straight triangle. We want to have it some depth and dimension. Now, if I start trying to paint right away with this pencil tool, you notice nothing happens. It's because I still have my selection here upon this shape. So if I want to change it, all I need to do is click the selection tool, go here to your marquee, click off. If it gives you that warning, it just means I try to click on something where there's no pixels. Alright, now that nothing is selected, I can go to my pencil tool, and I should be able to go ahead and draw my ears. Now, of course, if you do this and say, hey, this is a little too much of what I want here, I can, of course, hit the eraser tool and erase that back. Now, the big thing here is whatever I do to one side, I do to the other, so I want to make sure those are as identical as possible when doing this, so that way the image looks the same. Okay, so now we have two ears. Looking good. But what about the rest of the body? Well, let's go ahead and do some legs. So I'm going to go ahead and draw some pixel feet here. And I'm going to show you a shortcut here to make your life a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and go back to our selection tool. So with our marquee tool, let's go ahead and select the feet. Now notice it's selecting too much, so I want to actually make sure I come underneath that. And then what I can do is I can copy and paste. Now you won't see the pasted image right away, so we have to use our move tool, or V. And then I can move that foot that I copied without having to go ahead and repaint those individual pixels. Kind of a nice little trick. Back to our pencil tool, we're going to do the hind feet now. So let's go ahead and draw some other triangles coming out here to represent the hind legs. And make sure we put some feet coming out here to represent the toes. And that looks pretty good there. Same trick as before. Let's use our marquee selection tool. And copy and paste. Now, one thing you will notice though when I do it this time is that this shape is not the same direction as what we want. It is facing exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and press Control T, which is transformation, right click, and do flip horizontal. Then I can of course move that shape into place, get to where I want it to be, and you notice there are some guidelines that kind of pop up to show us where things are going to be. That looks pretty good. If I press enter, you notice it did slide in to the shape. If that happens, all you need to do is press Control Z. And just means that when you go to place that, make sure that when you place it, you leave that one gap there. So I have a little bit of a gap here, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave that. Press enter. And now you can see that it has merged in. Alright, our dog is looking pretty good. But what about some dimension? What about some features to make this look a little bit more animal-like? So for example, one of the things I can do is if I use my eraser tool, I could come in here, for example, look at the belly and say like, hey, this is a nice belly. What can we do to round this belly out? Now, if you notice, when we created different shapes here, when we copy and pasted, it made each of these layers into a new layer. So all our copy and pasted shapes are now a different layer. There's a trick here that we can do this to make our life easier. I'm going to go ahead and click on layer 3, 2, and 1. All right, or hold down the shift key. Then I'm going to right click, and what we're going to do is click on the option that says merge layers. That's going to now treat these as one object. So before they was putting them as different, now they're all the same. Now there are of course ways that you can work around that where you wouldn't have had to do that. For example, you could pencil each one of those things in, but it is good for you to see that in case you need to know how to merge those layers. So let's use our eraser tool and see we can actually erase out here to try and give the dog some kind of thinner appearance. Or maybe I want a chubbier dog. I can use my brush tool here to say, hey, you know what, this dog's got a bit of a belly. Maybe he's going to be rounder. I'm going to say our dog is actually on the thinner side here. So we're going to go ahead, hit the eraser tool. There's our thinner dog. And let's give the dog a little bit of neck definition here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and in here, come back in here. Maybe clean that up just a little bit. And when I look at that, I might say, you know what, this dog still kind of has too much that's floating up here. So I can use my marquee selection tool again. Looks like we went to oval. Grab our marquee selection. Let's go ahead and just select the dog's neck at this point. And then I can just click and drag that down. I can drag that to wherever I want it to go. So for example, if I just want to move it down to here, after I have that selection made, use the move tool, and we can move the dog's head down to where we want it to go. Remember, the dog was here, so if I shrink it down just a little bit and then press enter, or any other tool, we have now put our dog's head where we kind of want that dog to go. Again, this is not perfect. It's very crude and elementary, but it does work to help show how you can use simple shapes to create images.